as always, delete that default cube. I'm going to fix that one day. I'm going to change my default settings. I'm not going to have a default cube to delete. Won't that default cube be sorry? Create a mesh, plane, and then hit 7 on your numpad. Zoom in and pull over a shader editor. Good. Hit N to get rid of that. Click on this, go to the shader tab, select the material that was once on the default cube, and now we are in business. Don't forget to hit Z over here and go into rendered mode. That way we can see changes like so. I'm going to put this at like a light blue because I like it. First thing I want to do is mask out the cookie. So we're keeping it really simple, so let's just use UV. So we're only messing with the X and Y coordinates. UV map. Okay. Now that we have that, we need to get a circle. I'm going to get a mapping node as well. Mapping node, throw this on here. And I am going to, well, first let's look at the UV. 0, 0 in the bottom left, 1, 1 in the top right for X and Y coordinates. If we look at the mapping, nothing has changed. Good. Now let's get a vector math node. Throw this on here, get the length. Now, look at this. And it shows us that there's a length of 0 at the bottom left, and as we go out, the length gets longer. Let's move these over. I'm going to get myself a less than, let's see, so math, oops. Let's get math, good. Call this less than. And now we have our circle. Everything less than the length of 0.5 is going to be 1 or white, and then everything greater than is going to be 0. So now the only problem is that it's centered on the bottom left corner. So let's move that thing a little bit. First, I want to be able to scale it. So I'm going to get this value. I'm going to feed that into the scale. And now I can scale this thing with 1. In fact, let's make this threshold 1. So our scale is controlled here. And I know from recording this 1,000,000 times that the location value is going to be negative 0.5 times the scale. So let's do that. Create a math node, multiply this by negative 0.5, feed that into there, and then we're gonna get a combine x, y, z, get the value into the x, the y, the z can remain the same, throw that in, and now as we scale, our circle is centered. But let's do a quick coloring. Okay, I'm gonna pull this over. I'm gonna keep this right here, I guess. Move this, I don't know. Just move things around until they look pretty. I'm gonna make a mix RGB. Okay, and we're going to use this value as the factor, and the black area is going to be this color. So let's grab that color. And then we can grab a more cookie-ish color for the other area. And we're going to feed that into there and that into there. And we're going to look at the shader. Cookie. We've got a cookie. Next, what's next? Let's make some chocolate chips, and we're gonna use the special chocolate chip noise texture called Voronoi. Okay, let's take a look at it. Doesn't look like chocolate chips necessarily yet, but check this out. Go to distance to edge, and you've practically got chocolate chips. I'm gonna create a color ramp, throw that on there so we can tighten up the values. Throw that, something like that. That looks pretty good. Pretty happy with it, except they're all really uniform. So let's throw on a noise texture, and I'm gonna do some fancy schmancy stuff with the noise texture. I'm not just gonna feed this straight in, because that makes our chocolate chips look too dope. They actually look really delicious like this, but we don't want such a delicious cookie. We want something a little more traditional. So I'm gonna take another mix RGB. I'll throw that on there. I'm gonna throw in the AUV coordinates, and I'm gonna throw the color into here. And then you see what's happening is we have this noise, we have our UV coordinates, and then if we look at our mix, we can go from 0 factor, which is all UV coordinate, to all noise on the 1 factor. So I just want to squeeze in just like about 0.1 of the noise. I don't want so much noise. That way we can feed that into there, and we look at the Voronoi now. You see, we're not getting such delicious looking chips. We're getting something that just looks a little melted. Not melted? Yeah, a little melty. Too melty, too delicious. So back to like 0.1. Put this here, put this here, put this here. Put this here. Let's look at this. Okay, now we're getting something. Now, what's the problem? Chips are all over the place. It's like you just took the pan. If you think of the plane as a pan and you just threw them all in there. No, no, no. You want the chips to be in the cookie. So we're going to take this value and we're going to mask it onto this value. How are we going to do that? We're going to multiply. So let's get these out of the way. We're going to get another mix shader, but we're going to set it to multiply like so. And we're going to put this value in here. We're also going to throw the factor to 1. And we're going to put this value in here, and the chips are contained within the cookie. So now we can start messing around with their colors. Let's move this stuff over. We can duplicate this, get another mix shader, and now we can say, like, so this is the background, and then this is the cookie, but then we want to split up the cookie even further. I'm going to throw these chips in as the factor. I'm going to throw this in as the color, and I'm going to throw in just like a red to see where we're at. Just to see where we're at. We're going to throw this into the base color. We're going to look at that, and cool. That looks pretty good. We don't want that red necessarily, so let's throw in a color ramp. Throw that in as the color. Black to white. If I make this white like a dark chocolatey brown, this a little bit lighter, but still delicious and brown. Now, I think this looks pretty decent, but I want to control, I want to put this chocolatey color like all over the chips, and it looks like it's fading out, which actually could look realistic based on the cookie, but like the stylized version that I'm working on right now is not looking right. So the reason for that is that this mask has like values that are gray in here. So let's make sure that everything above 0 is represented by a 1. How do we do that again? Well, we're going to duplicate this. We're going to change it to greater than. We're going to say greater than 0, and we're going to feed this into here, and then this into here. This is going to make these mask out completely, and then we're going to look at this, and that's beautiful. Okay, now we have more of a delicious, chocolatey looking cookie thing. All right. I'm also just going to do one more thing because we're only getting the center value. I want to throw this, which has kind of these different values on the chips. I'm going to throw this in as the factor. Now let's look at it again. And now we get like, you can kind of see some variation in the chocolate. Yum. I want to add a little bit of bump to make these look like 3D. I know that this is a 2D illustration in a 3D software. So let's add a little 3D. Bump. Attach that to the normal. And oh my God, why? Oh, so it's an orthogonal view. I don't know. Now I need to put this value into the height. What is this value again? Let's look at it. It's these chips. I'm going to put this into the height. Let's look at it now. And it takes a minute, but we've got some 3D ass chips. We can play with the strength, we can play with the distance, you know, it's up to you at this point, but the chips are looking 3D. We might do it for the cookie, we might not. It depends on how I feel, if I can remember. This cookie's looking too round, don't you think? Maybe let's add a little bit of noise to it. What do you say? Let's duplicate. Let's take this up here. Okay. And I'm gonna throw this UV into here. I'm gonna throw the UV into here. And so this is the same kind of trick we were doing before where we have, you know, some factor, just a slight factor of noise. Let me put that back to 0.1. And we are going to throw, instead of throwing this UV into the mapping, we're going to now use this because it introduces a bit of noise. Noise. You see that? Now, you know, normal, burp, 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 burp. Yeah. 0.1. Okay, what's happening here? What's next? Let's look at the shader. And you can already see that the cookie looks a little more deformed. Isn't that nice? Isn't that nice? 0, add a little deformation. You can go really crazy with it and lose your cookie entirely. I suggest you don't. But let's just give it just a little bit of love. I'm gonna put that at 0.1 again. You can mess around with the scale of the noise too. I mean, you can soften it a little bit, maybe have something more like this. That looks good. Now our cookie color is way too uniform, so let's add a little bit of noise variation in there. So I'm going to create another noise texture. I know we're getting a little crazy with the noise textures, but hey, it's going to be worth it. This is going to be one damn fine two-dimensional cookie made in a three-dimensional software. So here's noise texture. Here's our cookie outline. Let's try this. Let's duplicate this. Let's turn it into a multiply. And let's multiply, I don't know, this factor with this value and see what we get. Cool, we get some noise on our cookie. That sounds great. I'm gonna add a color ramp. Throw that on there. And this should show us some cookie colors. What do you say? Let's kind of cookie color this thing. Actually, I'm gonna cheat and I'm gonna look up the colors I have because I like them. I'm just gonna look up this color and I'm gonna say, you know what? I want this to be BC6D3A. Oh, that's nice. And then I'm gonna look up this color and I'm gonna say that this should be FFBA66. And I think that looks really nice. Really nice. Okay, now, instead of feeding no color into here, where the cookie was, let's now feed this value in. And now we're getting somewhere. Our cookie has a little bit of texture, and our background is showing because this factor is switching between the two. Saw that all that color was on this background. Doesn't matter because this factor is throwing that out. Let's go back to here. Our shader, which is taking forever to load, probably because of the bump. And now our cookie has a little bit of texture to it, which I think looks really nice. You can play with the texture a little bit by messing around with the scale. You can actually make this look even better. As you can see, it looks very 2D with these 3D chips. So let's throw this into the bump. Let's include that in the bump. Let's clean this up a little bit. Can move these up a little bit. Move this here. These are our colors, right? What is this? These are our chips. So we've kind of got our chips and our cookie. And then what is this? This is also our chips, but not masked. So let's pull it to the left a little bit. Little secret that nobody uses, not even me until right now. And this is where we want to see we've got our chips going into the bump. We want to add some of this sweet texture into there. So how are we going to do that? We're going to duplicate this. We're going to change this to add because we want to add the values. And I'm going to take this sweet texture and I'm going to pull it all the way down here. And let's have a look at what these two look like together. They look like they've got the chips and a little texture on the bottom. And we can take a look at the shader. Let's see how it turned out. Oh, am I slouching? I'm trying not to slouch. Wow. Now that's a yummy looking cookie. Okay, save that. That's a little intense if you ask me. So I'm gonna bring down the noise a little bit here. Cause that noise is actually affecting the chips a bit, which is fine. But the real problem here is that our cookie looks like plastic. We need to take some of the shine off there. So we can move the roughness up, but the problem is then our chocolate chips don't look as delicious because they're not shining anymore. So let's see, how do we make our chips not rough, but our cookie rough? Well, we just want our chips to be not rough, so we need, here are our chips. We basically need the opposite of this value because we want everything else to be rough. With these being white, they will be the most rough. So we need the opposite. I'm going to take this, I'm going to subtract 1. 1 from this value becomes the opposite. And then we can feed this into the roughness. Look at the shader again. And now the chocolate chips will be completely unrough and everything else will be completely rough. Now, I don't like the way that the chocolate chips look when they're completely unrough or completely shiny, so I'm going to add another node, math node, and I'm going to wait for it to calculate, and I'm going to change this to an add, and then I'm going to add value. I'm going to clamp it so that the value stays between 0 and 1 for everything. So I'm going to clamp it, but then I'm going to add value so that the 0 values, which are the chips, I'm going to just push them up. Something like, I don't know, something like that. Cool. Wow. That is a delicious looking cookie. Wouldn't you say so? I would. If you want to mess around with the chips a little bit, you can go to this Voronoi texture. You can change it to 4D. This is already going to change the chip configuration. You gotta wait for it, wait for it, wait for it. Okay, chips have reconfigured, and then you can just you can change them to your heart's delight at this point. That looks pretty good. You can, you know, scale this noise. It'll give you different shapes. You can scale the Voronoi texture as well. That's gonna give you some different shapes. You can, you know, tighten this up. Maybe make flatter tops. I don't want flat tops. You know, sky's the limit. It's your cookie. You ever doing a tutorial and then you're looking at your notes and they don't make sense to you, so you have to stop the video and then come back and pretend like you never looked at the notes or ever paused and just act like you know everything all the time? Me neither. Noise.